3 nights ago, I was sitting at my parents' dining table holding my glass of water, like it was the only thing keeping me steady. My mom had made pot roast, the good kind, with the carrots soft all the way through. My dad was talking about his garden. Everything felt normal. Then Jason leaned back in his chair, that slow, deliberate lean he does when he's about to say something he's already rehearsed, and looked straight at me. Still renting at 34? That's wow. He paused just long enough for it to sting. I thought you were smarter than that, Emily. The table went quiet for exactly 1 second. Then my mom laughed into her napkin. My Aunt Carol covered her mouth. Then Jason pulled out his phone and turned it around. Closed on my $900,000 house this morning. He swiped through photos slowly. Marble kitchen. Spiral staircase. A pool with blue lighting. He was watching my face the whole time. Some people build equity, he said, setting the phone down. Others just fund their landlord's retirement. I forced a smile. I nodded. I let him talk. Because Jason had absolutely no idea what was already moving toward him. The next morning would arrive. And when it did, everything would be different. At 9:12 in the morning, Jason's name lit up my phone screen. That alone stopped me cold. Jason didn't call me. We texted maybe twice a month, forwarded family stuff, nothing personal. An actual phone call was something that happened once a year, usually around the holidays when my mom made him. I stared at it for 2 full rings. Then I answered. His voice was different. Not the voice from the dinner table the night before. Not that easy, rolling confidence that filled every room he walked into. This was something tighter. Something stripped down. A pause. Did you talk to anyone? About my mortgage? My stomach pulled in. What do you mean? Another pause. Longer. I heard him breathing. The bank called this morning. His voice dropped. They said they're reviewing my file. Everything's frozen. I sat very still. Frozen, I repeated. The whole thing. The account, the closing, everything. He stopped. I don't know what's happening. I kept my voice even. Okay. When did they call? An hour ago. Don't do anything yet, I said. I hung up and sat quietly. Because I already had a very good idea of what was happening. I just hadn't decided yet what I was going to do about it. Growing up, Jason and I were never mistaken for the same kind of person. He was the one who filled rooms. Loud laugh, quick with a joke, the type who made friends in parking lots and remembered everyone's name. Our parents lit up differently when he walked in. Not that they didn't love me, they did. But Jason was electric, and I was steady, and steady doesn't draw the same attention. He played football in high school. I ran the yearbook. He majored in business and spent half his college years at parties. I majored in accounting and spent mine in the library. He was making 6 figures by 28. I took a slower road, quieter work, smaller titles, building something methodical while he was already celebrating. The family story was simple. Jason was bold, and I was safe. Jason took risks, and I played it small. Jason built things, and I just waited. What nobody had ever bothered to ask was that I wasn't playing small at all. I had been playing quiet. There is a very large difference between those two things. And that difference was about to matter enormously. Jason had walked into something he didn't fully understand. And I was the only person in the family who did. 2 years before that dinner, I had taken a job at a risk compliance firm in downtown Cincinnati. It wasn't glamorous. Nobody at holiday parties ever got excited when I explained what I did. Risk compliance meant reviewing financial records, tracing loan structures, identifying inconsistencies. It meant learning the patterns that showed up when something had gone wrong, or when someone had made it go wrong on purpose. I reviewed mortgage documentation, income verification files, lender histories. I learned the difference between a loan that was aggressive and one that was fraudulent. I learned what banks looked for when they pulled a file for investigation. I was good at it. My manager called me detail-oriented, which in our field was the highest compliment available. So when Jason sat at that dinner table describing his deal, $900,000, fast closing, no down payment, some kind of special approval he mentioned like a prize he had won, something in the back of my mind shifted. Not alarm, not quite. More like a quiet recognition. The way you recognize a wrong note in a song you've heard 100 times. I didn't say anything at the table. I just stored it. And that night, I started looking. I want to be clear about what happened after dinner because it matters. I did not go home planning to investigate Jason's finances. That was not the intention. I went home a little embarrassed, a little tired, and more than a little irritated by the way the table had laughed. I made tea. I sat on my couch. I turned on the television and watched maybe 20 minutes of something I don't remember. But Jason's words kept cycling back through my mind. No down payment. Special approval. Fast-track closing. I knew what a standard mortgage looked like. I had reviewed hundreds of them at work. A $900,000 loan with no down payment and a fast-track close was not a deal. It was a flag. Not necessarily fraud. There were legitimate programs that moved quickly, niche lenders who worked outside conventional structures. But they came with strict conditions, and the way Jason had described his situation made it sound like he had simply gotten lucky. People in his income bracket didn't just get lucky on $900,000 loans. I set down my mug. I opened my laptop. I told myself I was only checking public records, quick search, nothing serious, just enough to settle the feeling. I did not sleep that night, because what I found wasn't nothing. Public property records are available to anyone willing to look. I started with the county recorder's office online. Jason had mentioned the suburb twice at dinner. He was proud of the address. The filing was easy to find. The deed was there, fresh, recorded 2 days prior. I pulled the lender name, a company called Hargrove Capital Lending. I had never heard of it, which wasn't automatically a problem. But I ran it through the same mental filter I used at work. Age of company. State licensing. Complaint record. Hargrove had been operating for 4 years. Their complaint record was thin, but not clean. 2 unresolved cases with the State Financial Regulatory Board. Then I looked at the loan structure itself. The numbers were layered in a way that took several minutes to trace. A primary loan, a secondary lien, a seller concession that had been folded back in to cover the down payment gap. The lender appeared to have loaned Jason the down payment through a related subsidiary, then recorded it as a separate asset line on paper. It was legal adjacent, technically possible, but messy. And one name on the broker line stopped me completely. A name I recognized. The broker's name was Kevin Marsh. I knew that name because I had seen it in a case summary that had come through our firm about 14 months earlier. We hadn't been the primary investigators, just a consulting reference. But I had read it carefully because it involved mortgage structures similar to ones I had been reviewing that quarter. Kevin Marsh had been flagged by a regional bank for income documentation irregularities on 3 separate loan applications. The cases never went to formal prosecution. 2 of the borrowers had quietly resolved their situations, and the third had become tangled in a civil dispute that dragged on without resolution. But the flag was there, in the records, for anyone who knew where to look. What the flag described was a recognizable pattern. Borrowers who wanted to qualify for loans they technically couldn't support on paper. Marsh had a reputation, not official, not convicted, but known within the compliance world as someone who found creative solutions. Solutions that looked clean until someone examined closely how the income figures had actually been constructed. Jason was not a criminal. I was already sure of that. My brother was arrogant and reckless, but he wasn't dishonest. What worried me was that he might have placed his trust in someone who was. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning with my laptop open and my tea gone cold. The documents were in front of me, all public record, nothing accessed improperly. And the picture they formed was not good. Not definitive. Not proven. But not good. I thought about what to do. The honest answer was nothing. This was not my problem. Jason was a grown man who had made his choices. He had sat at that dinner table 12 hours earlier and mocked me in front of our entire family. Called me slow. Implied I wasn't smart enough to do what he had done. The table had laughed. I could close the laptop. Go to bed. Let whatever was coming find him on its own. I almost did. I sat for a long time, running through it. The dinner table. His voice. My mom's laugh behind her napkin. His phone turning slowly to show the marble kitchen. Then I thought about what it would feel like to watch someone walk off a cliff and say nothing. Not because I owed him anything, but because of who that would make me. I closed the laptop, went to bed. The bank called him 8 hours later on its own. What Jason didn't know was that banks ran internal fraud detection systems in parallel with the closing process. When a file moved too fast, when income documentation had inconsistencies in formatting or sourcing, when a broker's name appeared anywhere on an internal watch list, those flags could surface after closing just as easily as before. Some lenders, especially smaller ones working with aggressive brokers, pushed files through before the full verification cycle completed. The closings happened. The paperwork got signed. And then, sometimes days later, a secondary review caught what the first one missed. That appeared to be exactly what had happened. Hargrove Capital had closed the deal fast. Too fast. Somewhere in that speed, the file reached a secondary review team, and someone on that team had looked at Kevin Marsh's name and started asking questions about the income documentation. The bank froze the account pending investigation. Standard protocol. Jason had not done anything wrong himself, as far as I could tell. He had trusted a broker who told him everything was fine, signed what he was told to sign, and moved in believing he had gotten a great deal. He hadn't gotten a great deal. He had gotten a time bomb. I was in a meeting when the family group chat started moving. I watched notifications stack on my phone for 40 minutes, unable to step out. When I finally got to it, there were 11 messages. My mom. Has anyone talked to Jason? He seems upset about something with the house. Aunt Carol. What happened? Is he okay? My cousin Brett. I heard something about the bank. And then Jason. Emily works in finance. This is very coincidental timing. I read that twice. Then I read the message that followed from my mom. Emily, do you know anything about what's happening with Jason's loan? The implication was sitting in plain text in a group chat that included 12 people. My brother had publicly suggested I had caused his problem. No evidence. No conversation with me first. Just the assumption, typed and sent to the whole family. I set my phone face down on my desk, breathed for a moment. Then I picked it up and typed, I don't know what Jason is referring to. I haven't contacted anyone. I hit send and went back to my meeting. But I could feel it, the story already being written without me. Jason showed up at my apartment at 6:30 that evening. I had seen his car in my lot when I came home from work. I stood in the parking structure for a moment, just looking at it, deciding. Then I went up the main way and opened the door when he knocked. He looked different. Not smaller exactly, but like something had been removed from him. The ease was gone. That automatic confidence, the thing that lived in the way he stood, the way he entered rooms, had pulled back. What was underneath looked tired and young in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. Did you report me? He asked. No hello. No apology for the unannounced visit. Just the question, direct, with his eyes fixed on my face.
No, I said.
He held my gaze, searching. Jason had always believed he was good at reading people. He was looking for a tell. I need you to tell me the truth. I just did, I said. I didn't report anything. I don't know who did, or whether anyone did. Come in, or don't. He came in, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't the loudest thing in the room. He sat at my kitchen table, and he talked. I had made coffee, not because I felt he deserved the hospitality, but because having something to do with my hands made it easier to listen without my face giving anything away. It started with the broker. Kevin Marsh had come recommended through a friend in Jason's sales network, someone who had used him on an investment property the year before and called him a miracle worker. Jason had gone to 3 traditional lenders first, all of whom had said the math didn't work for a $900,000 purchase on his income and existing debt. Marsh said he could make it work. He made it work by adjusting Jason's stated income on the application. Not dramatically, Jason said. Just enough to clear the qualifying threshold. Marsh called it optimizing the documentation. Told him it was industry standard. Said banks expected a little flexibility in how self-reported income was presented. Jason had believed him. Or he had let himself believe him, which is not quite the same thing. He stopped and looked at me. How bad is it? He asked. I put my mug down carefully. It's bad, I said. I want to explain what loan fraud means in practical terms. because people hear the word fraud and imagine something cinematic, a mastermind, a scheme, a deliberate con. What Jason had stumbled into was more ordinary than that, and more dangerous. Mortgage fraud through income misrepresentation was one of the most prosecuted financial crimes in the country. Not because it was rare, but because it was common. Brokers like Kevin Marsh operated in a gray zone they had convinced themselves was acceptable. Borrowers like Jason trusted them because they wanted the deal to be real. But banks didn't see gray zones. They saw falsified documentation on a $900,000 loan. And depending on how the investigation unfolded, the question of what Jason knew, when he knew it, and what he signed would determine whether he was a victim or a participant. That was the real stakes. Not just losing the house was already likely gone. That was survivable. What was not survivable, not without serious legal consequences, was being found to have knowingly participated in falsifying a federal mortgage application. Jason had not known. I was reasonably sure of that. But reasonable sureness was not a legal defense. "You know how this works," he said. "Right?" He said it quietly. Not the way he said things at dinner, not with that easy authority that assumed agreement. This was a genuine question. He was looking at me the way people look when they have admitted, fully and without qualification, that they need something they cannot get themselves. I had waited a long time to be looked at that way by my brother. Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because for as long as I could remember, Jason had operated on the assumption that I was the lesser version of us. The cautious one. The one playing it safe because she didn't have the nerve for anything bigger. To have him sitting at my kitchen table, asking me if I understood something that could determine whether his life went forward or collapsed. That shift was real. I didn't let myself enjoy it. That would have been wrong, and I knew it even then. But I didn't rush to reassure him either. Didn't immediately say, "Of course I'll help." Didn't smooth it over the way I used to smooth things over to keep the peace. I sat with it for a moment. Because the balance had changed and we both knew it. I thought about what I wanted to do. Not what I should do. I knew that already. He was my brother. Whatever he had said or done, the situation he was in came from naivety more than malice. But should is a word that flattens out the complicated parts, and I wasn't ready to flatten them. The truth was that Jason had spent our entire lives treating my choices as evidence of limitation. Stable job over a flashy one, playing it safe. Renting instead of buying, failing to understand real wealth. Moving carefully, thinking things through, all filed away in the family story as Emily being Emily. Steady, slow, cautious Emily. He had never once asked what I was actually building or why. He had simply assumed that loud meant forward and quiet meant behind. And now the quiet one was the only person with the knowledge to help him. I was going to help him. I had already made that decision somewhere around the second hour of my sleepless night. But not the old way, the Emily always smooths it over way. The way that taught him his behavior had no real cost. There were going to be terms. "I'll help you understand what's happening," I told him. "And I'll help you figure out how to respond." He exhaled. His whole body shifted, like something had been released. "Thank you, Em. Seriously, I'm not finished," I said. He stopped. "I'll help you. But you don't get to speak to me the way you did at that dinner table. Not ever again." I kept my voice level. Not hard, not emotional, just clear. "Not to me, not in front of Mom and Dad, not in front of anyone. That's the condition." He looked at the table. "It wasn't just last night," I said. "It's been the whole way you talk about my life. My apartment, my job, my choices. You've been doing it for years, and everyone laughs and nobody says anything, including me. That ends." The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator made its small hum in the corner. When he looked up, something in his face was different. Not broken, not ashamed exactly, but present in a way he usually wasn't. "Okay," he said, quietly. Just that one word. But he meant it and I could tell. I picked up my laptop. "All right," I said. "Let's start from the beginning and go through every document you have." He had brought what he could, photos on his phone, screenshots of email exchanges with Marsh, the closing summary he had received at the end of the process. Not everything, but enough to begin. We went through it piece by piece at my kitchen table, now covered in printouts and my notebook. The loan package, even from what I could see in the summary alone, had structures I would have flagged immediately at work. The income documentation referenced a base salary figure about 30% higher than what I knew Jason actually made from conversations over the years. The secondary lien used in place of a down payment was tied to a company that, once I searched it, appeared to be related to Hargrove Capital, the same lender. They had essentially loaned him the down payment through a subsidiary and then recorded it as a separate asset line on paper, making the loan appear conventionally structured when it was not. It was designed to look compliant while bypassing the requirements that existed to protect both the bank and the borrower. The deeper we went, the worse it looked. Jason kept saying things like, "I didn't know that was there," and Marsh told me that part was just standard. I believed him. That was the saddest part. About 2 hours in, I found the document that changed everything. It was buried in a closing package addendum, a supplemental income verification form. Jason hadn't brought it directly. I found it by tracing a reference number in one of his email screenshots to a document he had never opened. He logged into his email on my laptop. We pulled it up together. He read it. Then he read it again. "I never signed this," he said. At the bottom was Jason's name, in a signature font that was close to standard, but wasn't quite right. The date was 3 days before closing. The income figure listed was higher than the primary application by nearly $40,000, referencing an employer verification letter I was almost certain did not exist. "Did Marsh ever ask you to sign anything with this reference number?" I asked. Jason shook his head slowly.
"No."
"Never." I sat back. This was not income adjustment dressed up as optimization. This was a fabricated document submitted under Jason's name, without his signature. Marsh hadn't just bent the rules. He had forged documentation and used Jason as the borrower to complete a transaction Marsh had a financial interest in beyond his broker commission. Jason hadn't just been reckless. He had been used. It took a while to explain it in a way that fully landed. Jason understood sales and negotiation, not mortgage compliance. So I walked him through it carefully. Marsh had taken a willing borrower, someone who wanted a house he couldn't quite afford through conventional channels, and used that willingness to run a scheme that went further than Jason had agreed to. By inflating the income on the primary application, Marsh earned his commission. But the forged addendum was different. That document had been submitted without Jason's knowledge or signature. That changed Jason's legal exposure significantly. He was still the borrower on a fraudulent loan. He had still signed documents with inflated income figures. But if he could demonstrate that the core fraud, the forged addendum, had been done without his consent, his position shifted from participant to victim. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. "He used me," Jason said. "Yes," I said. "He used your willingness. He used the fact that you wanted the deal to be real." Jason stared at the table. For the first time since he had arrived, he didn't look like someone managing a situation. He just looked like a person who had been let down. I spent the next hour writing a clear summary of what had happened and what the bank would likely look for. I wasn't acting as his attorney. I said that explicitly. He needed to hire one immediately, someone specializing in mortgage fraud defense, not general practice. I wrote down 2 names from professional contacts and told him to call both in the morning. What I could do was help him understand the problem well enough to walk into those conversations without being blindsided. The bank's review would focus on 3 things: the accuracy of the income documentation, the origin of funds used instead of a down payment, and the validity of all signatures on submitted forms. If he walked in with no framework, just confusion and defensiveness, the bank would draw its own conclusions. If he walked in with a clear account of his experience, with a forged addendum identified and separated from what he had actually signed, with the broker's involvement documented and legal representation in place, his position was defensible. Not comfortable, not painless, but defensible. He listened without interrupting. He wrote things down. He asked reasonable questions. It was the most serious conversation we had ever had, and he was fully present for it. Jason met with the bank's review team 8 days later. I wasn't there. That wasn't my role, and I had been clear about the limits of what I was helping with. He had retained an attorney named Patricia Holloway, recommended by one of the contacts I had given him. She had reviewed everything and confirmed the core analysis. The forged addendum was the central piece. It moved Jason's position from willing participant to defrauded borrower. He texted me the night before. Just ready as I'm going to be. Thank you, M. I texted back. Go in with the facts. Let Patricia lead. Don't fill silences. He sent a thumbs up. Then after pause, I mean it. Thank you. I set the phone down and didn't reply to that part. Not because I didn't feel it, but because it was enough. The words had come from a real place, and I didn't need to soften them or wave them away the way I might have done a year earlier. I let them be what they were. He walked into that bank meeting 8 days after sitting at my kitchen table looking like someone whose floor had disappeared. He walked in prepared, honest, and accountable. That mattered. It mattered a great deal. The bank did not press criminal charges against Jason. Patricia Holloway told him that outcome was never guaranteed and that he should understand exactly how significant it was that the investigation had moved in the direction it had. The forged addendum had been decisive. Once the bank's legal team confirmed the signature on that document was not Jason's, a determination that took about a week of forensic comparison, the investigation shifted its full focus to Kevin Marsh. Marsh was formally referred to federal authorities for review of multiple loan files that shared structural similarities with Jason's application. Jason was still the named borrower on a fraudulent loan. The bank revoked it, which meant the entire purchase was voided. He lost the closing costs he had paid out of pocket. He lost the weeks he had believed, however briefly, that he had finally made it in the way he had always wanted to. But he did not face criminal charges. His credit, his career, and his freedom all remained intact. And Kevin Marsh, who had done this to other borrowers and simply had not been caught clearly enough before, Jason moved into a rental unit 3 weeks after the loan was revoked. A 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building about 12 minutes from our parents' house. Beige carpet. A kitchen with older appliances. A small balcony facing the parking lot. Nothing like the marble kitchen and spiral staircase he had swiped through on his phone at dinner. He sent me a photo the day he moved in. The empty living room. Afternoon light through the window. Boxes stacked against one wall. I looked at it for a while. Then I replied, "Looks like a solid start." He sent back a single laughing emoji. A real one, not mean the kind that comes from somewhere honest. My mom called that week and circled around the conversation she was trying to have. Eventually, she said, "You were good to help him, Emily. You didn't have to." "I know," I said. "But he's still my brother." She was quiet for a moment. "You're a better person than I am," she said. That was not something she had ever said to me before. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just said, "I'll see you at dinner Sunday." About a month after everything had settled, my mom had us all over for dinner again. Same dining table, same chairs, same pot roast with the carrots soft all the way through, my dad talking about his tomatoes, Aunt Carol and my cousin Brett. The whole group gathered as if nothing had happened, and also as if everything had. Jason arrived a few minutes after I did. He came in quieter than usual, helped carry dishes from the kitchen without being asked, something I had never seen him do before. We sat down. We passed the bread. My dad made his usual toast about family, and everyone clinked glasses. Halfway through the meal, Jason looked at me from across the table. "Renting isn't so bad," he said. Simply. No setup, no angle. Nobody laughed. Aunt Carol glanced between us. My mom looked at her plate. My dad kept eating. The table absorbed the sentence without comment. I looked at my brother. A month ago, he had sat at this exact table and used me as the punchline to a joke about his own success. He wasn't that person right now. Maybe he wouldn't always be different. But right now, he was trying. I nodded once. The conversation moved on. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. Then I set it back down and said quietly, without any performance, "Yeah, especially when you actually understand